Hello, everyone. I have a very special guest on with me today, Mr. Buddy Thornton. He's the editor of this amazing book, and he actually made it possible for it to be as fluent as we need for it to be for your understanding. And Buddy has a huge resume within himself about his accomplishments, and I'm going to let him talk about that in just a second. But first of all, I want to thank him for taking the time out to be here with me and taking the time out to pour himself into this book, this manuscript that we created here. And Buddy, how you doing today?
Yeah. George, I am doing great, and I really appreciate the invite to talk about your incredible book on launch day. And this was a work of passion that I could see coming from your heart and soul, and I was privileged that you allowed me along with the journey with you.
Yes, thank you, Buddy. Well, let me ask you this, because this is such a broad topic. I mean, we're not really broad, but it's such a topic that's been permeating for years now. When I first brought the manuscript to you and you saw what it was, the content of it was, tell me what your initial thought was.
Well, my initial thought was, where was this 25, 30 years ago? And, I'm a little older than you are, George, not much, but a little older than you are. And, I've seen 6 decades of baseball, and you could have wrote this book at any point in the last 30, 40 years, and it would be incredibly relevant to that era. And to me, that speaks volumes that it is sad that we are still talking about something when we supposedly had the civil rights era of the 1960s, and now we are 60 years later, and we're still talking about a topic that is not only relevant, but important. It's not just relevant. It's important that people realize that this impacts lives. And now, I mean, you and I were teens, right? And now you're talking about your grandson. So, yeah. I mean, how many generations have to go through the pain and agony that you describe in this book before someone in society takes action?
Wow. Thank you. Because I knew it was going to take a special person to collaborate with to make sure that my voice was heard in the right tone and in the right fashion so that we can get the desired result for the book. And although at some points in writing the book, there were some tears, there were some, very emotional moments. There was a little pain, there was a little bit of anger. But I wanted to make sure when the book was published and when it came out that it had a tone of, let's bring some resolution to this subject. Let's talk about it. Let's dialogue about it. Let's stop talking about it in the back rooms. Let's stop talking about it on the corners of the baseball diamonds or in social media groups, and just start bringing it out so that we can actually start doing some things, and hopefully the right ears will hear it and they'll absorb it and take it in, and then we can take the next steps beyond that.
Well, George, first of all, I want to tell you the part of the story that is you and the ink that you poured into the manuscript immediately came out. I mean, when I read the raw material, it was like, wow, I'm talking to someone who understands exactly what is the down and dirty of every sport. I mean, I was a professional athlete in a different sport, and yet the same exact environment existed. And that's not to minimize that it exists in baseball, because baseball is where it is probably the most visible. And it comes out in a way that when you look at the 60s, and you look at the 70s, and you watch those films, and now you look at today, you go, wait a minute, where are the black players? What has transpired? What has happened? Why are we looking at it this way? And when I compare that to how you wrote the book, it was like, wow. Yes, and you're right. There were some parts of the book that needed to be heartfelt and from your soul. And people have to hear that message raw. They have to hear that message exactly the way you meant to say it. There's no candy coat in some of the things that you needed to put in the book. And yet, you know as well as I do, George, throughout society, people tiptoe around this all the time.
Yes.
a lot of it is because of political correctness. And I understand you don't want to insult people and you don't want to hurt their feelings. But, you know, when you don't hurt somebody's feelings enough, they don't do anything to change anything. So you
Thanks.
need, sometimes you got to light the world on fire to get the people to put the fire out.
Wow, I like how you said that. I like how you said that. And that's what I really want to do, get this fire stirred up enough that we decide as a society to do something about it and extinguish it permanently, not just temporarily, permanently. Oh man, this is, you know, it's been a long time coming, and this day finally got here, and I'm so excited about it. And I'm so happy because, you know, like you said, I'm telling a story about myself, about my grandson, but I'm also telling a story of an entire baseball community that I've interviewed, coaches I've talked to, parents I've talked to, kids I've talked to, and I've watched this. So this is, you know, this became more than just about me and my family. It became a story of a nation, or you know, of a group of people, a lot of people, because this impacts so many people. And most importantly, I want people to understand this just doesn't impact Black people. It impacts everybody, because when any minority or any organization or any person that encounters inclusivity, discrimination, being felt alienated, it impacts all of us. And we all have to live with that. So we all have to figure out how do we bring that together and make it function and work the way we need for it to function.
Well, and you know, there's a couple of hidden components in there too, George.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when they watch sports on TV, they think, oh, every player's a millionaire, everybody's, you know, a superstar. And compared to normal people who can pick up a ball and throw it, every guy in those dugouts, even if they don't play more than 10 innings a year, they're still superstars compared to the normal everyday guy. Sure. But at the end of the day, the top 2% to 5% make most of the money. Mm-hmm. And the guys who put on their pants and go to work every day to make what I like to call journeyman money in the sport, those guys need the message to get out there that, hey, I'm putting in the time, even though I'm not the guy with the name in the lights, I'm not the guy who's the superstar, but I'm here because even with my smaller salary, I can still make in my career of 5 to 7 years, but I would not have made in 50 years doing something else. True. And that money is going to impact my family in a way that gets them over a very important hump. And people don't understand that when you put up barriers that prevent people from even just getting in the dugout and making that kind of money, you're preventing them from impacting the generations of their own household. And that's a pain that's very difficult to ignore. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I've talked to some of the guys, obviously I know a lot of the superstars in a lot of the different sports, but you know, when I talk to people like Robin Young, he said the same thing when I mentioned the fact that you were writing this book, and he said, well, you know, that's a story that needs to be told, because for every kid who didn't make it, how many people didn't make it, not because they didn't have the skills, but because somebody else held them down or somebody else didn't open a door. Mm-hmm. And of course, he's looking at it across the spectrum like you are. It's white kids from, you know, very, very depressed economic groups. It's Hispanics, it's Blacks, it's anybody who is not in the upper echelon of affluence, who's trying to find a way to make impact and do something that they're passionate about.
Yes.
So, you know, in my world, I feel like, you know, if we can help even 1 or 2 kids break through the barrier and convince a coach that, you know what, instead of holding somebody back, why don't you elevate them, put them on the pedestal, let's get them moving forward. Not only do you help that player, but you help that player's family right now and their future generations for several generations to come, because you can completely change their family tree. That's so important.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up about the kids, because that is such a key component in the book. and that was one of the mindsets or things that I want to really go through and talk about in the book, is how this is affecting the kids and the mental stability, the anxiety, the anguish that they go through, and not being able to compete and play a sport that they love. There should be no barrier that would prohibit them from doing it, other than the fact that they choose not to do it. And I've talked to several families and kids that have just been so distraught. Not only have they had to seek counseling behind this type of treatment and this type of unfair biasness, and it's been a struggle. Some of them, it's taken years to get through and to figure out how to navigate through life because of this, because of the decisions that adults are making, and how they are impacted by those decisions in the sport. They're just trying to have fun and enjoy themselves in it.
Well, and I think you need to really embrace the word fun, because I've never known a child to pick up any sport if they didn't enjoy doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You were a player. I was a player when I was a kid. I ended up being a professional bowler. Yeah, okay, it's a different sport, but you know what? I wouldn't have been out there putting in all those long hours of practice and, just bloodying my fingers sometimes from the number of games I would bowl because I wanted to make a paycheck. I was out there because I loved it first and foremost. The paycheck was just an offshoot of happening to be fairly good at it, right?
Yes.
So the kids, what the kids do is they reach a point, especially after the age of 12 or so, from 12 till their early 20s, what they see is they want to know who they are in the world, and they want to know why they don't deserve what other people deserve. They're going to ask that question to themselves more than they'll ever ask me or you.
Yes.
And when they get treated a certain way, they're being told, I don't perceive that you have value. I don't believe you're good enough. And it isn't about the baseball. It isn't about the sport.
Yes.
As a human being, they embed that as a human being. They go, why am I not good enough? If you took it completely strictly on the statistics and how good these kids can be, a lot more kids would have an opportunity to at least compete for the higher levels.
That's true.
And when I see someone who's depressed or not allowed to play, or perhaps they're put in a situation where someone says, you know what, we're going to put this all-star league over here, but we're going to make a barrier to entry. We're going to say it's going to cost $500 in insurance for any kid to play. Yes. How many kids get excluded because mom and pop can't come up with $500?
Absolutely.
And at that point, is it really about the baseball, or is it about excluding? Is it about controlling the narrative?
Yes.
And the adults and the parents need to know that that's wrong.
Yes.
They need to embed that it's wrong. And it needs to start from the very top echelon, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, all the way through the ranks, that there needs to be a fund set up so that when a kid really wants to do something and he doesn't have the wherewithal, somebody can say, okay, we're going to start from the bottom up. We're gonna make sure all these kids get the opportunity to participate. That doesn't guarantee they're good enough.
Yes.
It does open the door.
Correct.
And I think that's what your book opens, that door to that possibility.
Yes, and it's really relevant and to everything you just said, and also the component of life. Like you said, this book encompasses more than just baseball. I mean, the some of the material that's in the book is actually, it's life lessons. It's going to give you some tools to use to work with, how to overcome, how to get your mindset in a position so now that you can compartmentalize the things that you have to deal with, and you're able to get through them more fluently and in a different light, in a different way than you were before you read the book. So it's a book about the sport of life. I like to refer to it as sometimes. It's the sport of life. So I think that anyone who picks this book up, one of the things you're going to be able to do with this book when you finish reading it is pass it on to someone else, because it's going to affect and it's going to change somebody's life as well as yours. And you want that to happen.
Right. Well, there's a couple of things that come out in the book. Number one, the way you wrote it is you made sure that the raw emotion of how a child feels when they feel any kind of barrier that they're going to have to break through, and they're not seeing the adult in the room helping them. You brought that out very strongly. We didn't address bias directly as we're going to teach you what bias means and how it happens and this. We didn't do that, but we did explain how bias operates.
Yes.
Because, people are going to always circle back to self-interest.
Yes.
So explain to me how a coach who's got 25 kids who want to be on a team, how does he select, other than just raw skill, how does he select anybody without including bias? And we address that in the book. We
Yes.
say, you need to start looking at these kids as human beings first.
Yes.
Because you are not teaching them to be a baseball player. You're teaching them to be a good human being.
Yes.
And think about the greatest coaches that we always tend to look at, and I always circle back to one that's in your backyard because you're in Southern California, John Wooden. He said he never taught kids how to play basketball. He said he taught kids to be young gentlemen. They already knew how to play basketball.
Yes. Yes.
And if you weren't willing to be part of the team and be a pro-social person, John Wooden wasn't going to have you on one of his teams.
That's true.
He had some of the greatest athletes of all time on his teams that we revere. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, that says a lot, right? So
yes.
And then of course the white counterpart, Bill Walton.
Yep.
You got two guys who were absolute monsters in the game, and they both had to come up in the environment that John Wooden put on them. So that speaks to me that John Wooden wasn't looking at Kareem as being black and Bill as being white. He was looking at them as, you're going to have to toe the line and be good human beings before you can play in my house.
Yes. Wow, that's deep. I actually got a chance to meet I actually got a chance to meet John Wooden once at a restaurant. I just happened to walk in the restaurant that he would eat in on Ventura Boulevard, and he was eating breakfast at this restaurant, which I found out that he did quite frequently. And he was an amazing man. So, that speaks volumes when you bring up his name and what he's accomplishing, his mindset, and how he dealt with young people, young adults. And I hope that after reading this book, the coaches, the moms and dads who need answers that they don't understand why, and the players that play the game, and they have to look at themselves and say, look, I'm more than just this game. And I wish someone would see me like that and understand how to deal with different nationalities of people, different races of people. You can't, because everyone's not going to be the same. But the one component that is the same, kids are kids. They all going to do stuff. They're all going to repeat the same stuff. But how do we put that in perspective when we look at a white kid, a black kid, a Latino kid, an Asian kid? We have to be able to put that in perspective so that we see they're just kids.
Oh yeah. Well, a couple of weeks ago we had a birthday party at our house, and one of my great grandsons turned 7, and we had about 50 people at the house, but we had about 25 kids. And I took a picture of the pool, and in the pool you had Hispanic, black, white, a couple of Orientals. We had some that were as young as 3 and some kids as old as 12 or 13. And you know what? I can't remember seeing a kid that didn't have a smile on their face. I can't remember seeing a kid that wasn't playing with whoever the kid was in front of them. Nobody was thinking about the origin story. No one was thinking about race. No one was thinking about anything but, I'm here, I'm going to have fun. These people appreciate me, they love me, they want me to be here. We need that environment in sports.
Yes.
I'm the COO of a nonprofit. We help disadvantaged youth, and we teach them leadership skills. and we teach them life skills.
Yes.
And someone said, well, why aren't you teaching them, you know, a job skill or something like that? And I'm like, I have no right to dictate to them what their choices are going to be later on in life. But when they come to me and they say, you know, my dad's incarcerated and my mom died in a car accident, and I'm living with my grandparents, and I have all the love in the world I could ever have, but I don't have any direction. That's a child who's begging to be recognized and be shown that they have value. So we start the leadership skills by teaching them to understand that they, just in being a human being, they have value.
Yes.
Once they embrace that and they understand that, and then we tell them, now, you don't have to defend your value. That you get that from birth. So now let's just put that on the shelf. You have that. Now, what can we work on? And you cannot imagine how these kids blossom and they just shoot up. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, instead of being a D student or a failing student, now all of a sudden they're preparing to go to the next level.
Yes.
And that's what's missing in baseball. That's what's missing in all of the different sports with these kids. Instead of people thinking about, well, it's just one big competition after another. It is not a competition. You know, competition is what the end result is. It's co-opetition and collaboration to get these kids to understand that I'm going to compete with you inside the lines. Outside the lines, I want you to be my best friend.
Oh, absolutely. I think it couldn't have been said more eloquently and more beautiful than you just stated, but and that's amazing. So, you know, I can't leave off the air without first thanking Elite Publications, my publisher, along with Gifts of Legacy, who has been amazing to me and helping me get this manuscript out into the public's eye. And I just really appreciate them so much. And Buddy, there again, I mean, when we first met, you know, we hit it off right on, you know, from the very beginning, and you've been a tremendous blessing to me. And I want the people to know, you know, how they can, you know, what you do and how they can reach out to you if they ever need to have something edited or they want to know what you do as far as your programs and things like that. Can you please share that with them, please?
Well, I'll be glad to do that. Number one, I'm a mediator. That I'm obviously an ex-athlete. And I'm a mediator. I own a mediation company, but I really, really circle between two areas. I work with corporations to help them with their culture. And what does your book address? Culture, right?
Yes.
So I also work with families. I work with families in crisis. I work with parents who have difficult time working with their kids. And a couple of my books are targeted at helping them understand how to allow their children to co-create their world with them. And it empowers the parents to let the children live their lives. And that's what I strive to do. And with my book writing and my editing, it's a natural offshoot. I get to work with people like you, George, which is my blessing, because I get to take a story that may be a little raw on the edges, and I get to smooth it out and make it something that people will read and they will get a lot out of, but without changing the message. And so anybody who wants to find me, number one, my name is pretty easy to remember, but they can look me up on Amazon. My website is buddypscapro.org. And so, it's exactly like my logo shows right there on the screen, buddypscapro.org. And I will talk to anybody. They can, I don't care. We'll put my phone number. It's on my website. It's everywhere. When people call me or text me, I respond. I have a 100% response rate. And, George, you're like a brother to me now. We've spent the last 6-7 months working together on this book. And I feel like, the next trip for me to Southern California means that you and I need to break bread and I need to, be part of the family. So I want people around the world to understand that. My doctorate is in cross-cultural competency and conflict management. That's what I do. I tamp down conflict, and I like to do it between cultures. And you and I, we have a different origin story.
Yes.
Okay, you're black, I'm white. I grew up in Texas in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. And I grew up in a small town where the only color we cared about was the color of the uniform. We didn't care about anything else. If you had on the color of my uniform, I was going to give you the ball. If you didn't, I wasn't going to give it to you no matter what. So that's the mentality we need to bring forward to these kids.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if anybody reaches out to me about helping them write a book, the only caveat I have is, you know what, make me feel passionate about your story. I will work with anybody who can make me feel passionate. If I don't feel passionate about you, I have tons of resources to pass you off to, or I can help and I can line edit afterwards or whatever. But, you know, people all have stories, George. Yours was eloquent. It was beautiful. It was necessary. And it was a pleasure and an honor to bring it to the people. And, you know, God bless you. And I hope that you just sell tons and you get to talk to a lot of people about your message, because you're another one of those things that it was like, wow, I got to put my thumbprint on that just for a moment. And that was a big blessing for me. So don't forget that.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. Like I said, once again, you have my honor, my respect, my love, and I thank you for coming on. And I want to tell the audience also, now I put together a resource page for those who purchase the book. And if you purchase it, then I will send you that resource page, and it is a valuable, listen to me, it's a valuable resource that you want and you're gonna need. But once again, I don't want to keep Buddy any longer. I want to thank everyone for coming, for tuning in, getting a chance to listen to us talk about my book, The Black and White of Baseball, Overcoming Bias in Baseball and Life. And I look forward to seeing you, interviewing with you, talking with you, communicate with me through email. And Buddy and I will definitely be back on again. We'll probably do a panel where we can talk about the book and just some other things in life which he outlined. So we hope to see you soon. Have a good day.
Hey, George. Thank you, people.
You too, buddy.